In the vast expanse of the Galactic Military Academy, where the finest warriors from 1,000 worlds train to defend civilization, there exists an unwritten rule. Humans are support staff. They're the mechanics, the medics, the logistics coordinators, never the fighters. After all, what could a species that barely survived its own planetary conflicts offer against the Zephyrian death squads or the armored behemoths of the Kratonian Empire? Cadet Elena Vasquez understood this hierarchy perfectly. At 19, she was smaller than most alien cadets' appendages, weaker than their juveniles and slower than their elderly. She cleaned their weapons, maintained their equipment, and watched from the sidelines as they trained for glory. The other species saw her as harmless, a useful pet that could fix things when they broke. But Elena carried a secret that would shatter every assumption about human capability. Deep in Earth's classified archives lay the reason why her species had been so carefully placed in support roles, why human military records remained sealed, and why certain admirals went very pale when asked about the Terran protocols. The galaxy was about to learn that sometimes the most dangerous predator is the one that doesn't look like a predator at all. And it all began with a single combat exercise that was supposed to be routine training, until Elena's performance was accidentally broadcast across the entire Academy network. What followed would change not just how the galaxy viewed humans, but how they viewed war itself. The morning alarm at Kepler Station Military Academy cut through the artificial atmosphere like a plasma blade, jolting thousands of cadets from their sleep cycles. Elena Vasquez rolled out of her bunk with practiced efficiency, her movements economical and precise despite the early hour. Around her, the other human cadets stirred more slowly, grumbling about another day of what they had come to accept as second-class treatment. "Another glorious day of cleaning Kratonian battlesuits," muttered James Chen from the bunk above, his voice thick with resignation. "I swear their armor gets heavier every week." Elena pulled on her maintenance uniform, a drab gray jumpsuit that marked her as support personnel rather than a combat trainee. The distinction was important here. Combat cadets wore midnight blue with silver piping, their uniforms crisp and commanding. Support staff wore gray, and everyone knew what that meant. "Could be worse," Elena replied, checking her toolkit with the methodical precision that had made her invaluable to the Academy's instructors. "Remember what happened to Rodriguez when he questioned why humans couldn't join combat training?" James winced. Rodriguez had been transferred to sanitation duty on a mining station at the edge of civilized space. The message was clear. Humans should be grateful for their support roles and not aspire to anything more. The dormitory for human cadets was located in the lower levels of the station, far from the grand quarters assigned to the warrior species. As Elena made her way through the corridors, she observed the careful hierarchy that governed life at the Academy. The Zephyrians, with their towering frames and natural armor plating, moved with the confidence of apex predators. The crystalline Nexari communicated in harmonic frequencies that could shatter glass when they were agitated. The Kratonians were living tanks, their exoskeletons capable of withstanding direct plasma fire. And then there were the humans. Small, soft, seemingly fragile creatures who scurried through the corridors carrying tools and spare parts. To the other species, they were useful but unremarkable. Ellen had learned to use this perception to her advantage. She arrived at Workshop Bay 7, where a massive Kratonian battlesuit awaited her attention. The suit stood nearly 4 meters tall, its black surface scarred from training exercises. Its pilot, Cadet Thorax Prime, watched Elena with compound eyes that showed barely concealed disdain. "Human maintenance creature." Thorax Prime clicked in heavily accented Standard Galactic. "The targeting systems require recalibration. Do not damage the delicate components with your crude appendages." Elena nodded politely, though internally she noted that the Kratonians' idea of delicate involved systems that could withstand nuclear explosions. She began her work, interfacing with the suit's neural networks through quantum-encrypted connections. Her fingers moved across holographic displays with a fluidity that seemed almost supernatural. What Thorax Prime didn't realize was that Elena wasn't just calibrating the targeting systems, she was learning them, Every circuit, every response pattern, every weakness in the design was being cataloged and stored in her memory. It was a skill that had served her well throughout her time at the academy, though she was careful never to let anyone see the full extent of her capabilities. "Fascinating," she murmured, examining a subsystem that controlled the suit's combat reflexes. "This response algorithm is based on Kryptonian neural patterns, very efficient for direct confrontation." "Of course it is efficient," Thorax Prime chittered with pride. "Kryptonian warriors have evolved for 10,000 years to be perfect killing machines. Your species fights with sticks and stones." Elena continued working, her expression neutral. "Let him think that," she mused. "Let them all think that." The truth was considerably more complex. Elena had grown up on Terra Colony 7, one of the frontier worlds where human settlements clung to existence in the face of constant threats. Pirates, hostile alien raiders, and worse had tested the colonists regularly. Elena's father had been a military engineer, her mother a tactical analyst. She had been raised on stories of human conflicts that the broader galaxy had never heard about. More importantly, she had access to classified databases that detailed humanity's true military capabilities that had been carefully hidden from their alien allies. The official story was that humans had barely achieved spaceflight when they encountered galactic civilization, that they were grateful newcomers who had been graciously allowed to join the community of sapient species. The reality was that humanity had been fighting wars in space for decades before first contact, and those wars had forged them into something remarkable. But revealing that truth would have consequences that few were prepared for. As Elena finished the calibration work, she noticed Commander Vexul approaching across the workshop floor. The Zephyrian instructor was responsible for combat training, and his presence in the maintenance bay was unusual. His serpentine form moved with predatory grace, and his reputation for harsh discipline preceded him. "Cadet Vasquez," Vexul's voice carried the subtle harmonics that made Zephyrian speech so intimidating. "Report to Training Bay Alpha in 30 minutes. Bring your standard equipment." Elena looked up surprised. Training Bay Alpha was restricted to combat cadets. "Sir, there must be some mistake. I'm assigned to maintenance duties today." "There is no mistake. You have been selected for a special assignment." Vexul's expression was unreadable, but there was something in his tone that suggested this wasn't routine. "Do not be late." As the commander departed, Thorax Prime made a sound that Elena had learned to recognize as Kryptonian amusement. "Perhaps they need someone to clean the combat simulators. Try not to break anything important, human maintenance creature." Elena gathered her tools, her mind racing. Special assignment could mean anything, and very little of it was likely to be good. In her experience, when humans were called to special assignments, it usually meant someone needed a scapegoat for when things went wrong. 30 minutes later, Elena stood outside Training Bay Alpha, her heart rate elevated despite her attempts to remain calm. Through the reinforced viewing windows, she could see the massive combat simulators that were used to train the Academy's elite cadets. The chamber beyond was large enough to hold full-scale battle scenarios, with holographic projectors capable of creating environments so realistic that cadets had been known to suffer actual injuries from imagined weapons. The door slid open, revealing Commander Vexul and 3 other instructors. Elena recognized Commander Nexus 9, a crystalline Nexari whose harmonics could induce paralysis in most species, and General Morthak, a veteran Kryptonian whose scarred exoskeletons spoke of countless battles. "Cadet Vasquez," Vexul gestured for her to enter. "You have been selected to participate in a tactical assessment exercise. Your performance will be evaluated for potential advancement opportunities." With trust Teddy, Elena's surprise must have shown on her face because General Morthak made a grinding sound that served as Kryptonian laughter. "Do not look so shocked, human. Even maintenance personnel must occasionally prove their worth." "What kind of assessment?" Elena asked, her voice carefully controlled. Commander Nexus 9's crystalline form chimed with harmonics that Elena felt in her bones. "Combat simulation, standard infiltration and elimination scenario. You will be equipped with basic combat gear and given a mission objective. Elena's pulse quickened. This was either a remarkable opportunity or an elaborate setup. Given the Academy's history with human cadets, she suspected the latter. May I ask why I was selected? Your maintenance records show exceptional system analysis capabilities, Vexul explained. The simulation requires someone who can adapt to unknown technologies under combat conditions. Your species' reputation for improvisation made you a suitable candidate. There it was. They needed someone expendable who could figure out alien technology on the fly. If she succeeded, the credit would go to her instructors. If she failed, well, everyone expected humans to fail anyway. I understand, Elena said simply. What she didn't say was that she had been preparing for this moment her entire life. The careful facade of harmless competence, the years of study disguised as simple maintenance work, the combat training she had conducted in secret, using her access to human military databases, all of it had been leading to this. You will face a simulated hegemony strike team, General Morthak explained as technicians began fitting Elena with basic combat armor. 5 elite warriors equipped with advanced weaponry. Your objective is to reach the extraction point while avoiding or eliminating hostile contacts. Elena nodded, testing the weight and balance of the armor. It was standard Academy issue, designed for training rather than actual combat, but it would have to do. The weapon they provided was equally basic, a plasma rifle with limited ammunition and standard targeting systems. The exercise will be monitored for training purposes, Commander Nexus 9 added. All combat data will be recorded and analyzed. As Elena was escorted to the staging area, she caught sight of the observation deck above the training bay. Dozens of cadets had gathered to watch, their faces showing expressions ranging from curiosity to barely concealed amusement. She recognized many of them, Crotonians, Zephyrians, and Nexari, who had watched her perform maintenance on their equipment for months. Among the observers, she spotted several human cadets from her dormitory. Their expressions were worried, and she could see James Chen gesturing frantically as if trying to communicate something. The message was clear. Whatever this was, it wasn't going to end well for her. Elena took a deep breath and entered the simulator chamber. The space transformed around her, holographic projectors creating a detailed urban environment. She found herself in what appeared to be a bombed-out city with rubble-strewn streets and damaged buildings providing cover and concealment. The extraction point was marked on her heads-up display roughly 2 kilometers away through hostile territory. Simulation commencing in 60 seconds, an automated voice announced. Cadet Vasquez, prepare for combat scenario initiation. Elena checked her weapon and equipment one final time, then moved to a position behind a collapsed wall. Her mind shifted into the tactical mode she had practiced countless times in secret, drawing on lessons learned from her father's military manuals and her own analysis of combat patterns. The humans in the galaxy were seen as harmless support staff, useful for maintenance and logistics but unsuitable for combat. That perception had been carefully cultivated and maintained for decades, ever since humanity's first contact with galactic civilization. What the other species didn't know was that this perception was exactly what humanity's leadership wanted them to believe. Elena had read the classified reports hidden in the depths of Earth's military archives. She knew about the Centauri conflict, where human forces had fought a 3-year war against automated defense systems that made the hegemony's elite troops look like children's toys. She knew about the Tau Ceti incident, where a single human special operations team had eliminated an entire rebel fleet using nothing but improvised weapons and tactical brilliance. Most importantly, she knew about the Terran protocols, the standing orders that every human in the military carried, orders that would only be activated if humanity's true nature was ever revealed and the galactic community turned against them. But for now, Elena was just a maintenance worker who had been thrown into a combat simulation. At least, that's what everyone watching believed. Simulation initiated, the voice announced. Hostile contacts are active. Good luck, Cadet Vasquez. Elena smiled grimly and began to move through the simulated urban environment. The observers in the gallery above were about to receive an education in human capabilities that they would never forget. She just hoped she could maintain enough of the facade to avoid triggering the protocols that would change everything. The hunt was about to begin, and for the first time in her academy career, Elena Vasquez was the hunter rather than the prey. Elena moved through the simulated cityscape with careful deliberation, every sense attuned to her environment. The holographic projectors had created a remarkably convincing urban warfare zone. Collapsed buildings leaked synthetic smoke into the air. Distant explosions echoed off concrete walls, and the acrid smell of burning materials added an unsettling realism to the exercise. Above her, in the observation gallery, she could feel the weight of dozens of eyes tracking her movement through the surveillance feeds. The alien cadets were probably placing bets on how quickly she would be eliminated. Humans weren't known for their combat prowess, after all. Elena crouched behind an overturned vehicle and activated her helmet's tactical display. The simulation's parameters scrolled past her vision. 5 hegemony warriors, each equipped with advanced armor and weapons that could punch through starship hull plating. The objective marker pulsed steadily 2 kilometers away, but between her and safety lay a maze of destruction that could hide any number of threats. What the observers didn't know was that Elena had spent countless hours studying hegemony tactical doctrine through maintenance access to their captured equipment. She knew their preferred ambush points, their standard patrol patterns, and most importantly, their psychological profiles. Hegemony warriors were apex predators from a high-gravity world where only the most aggressive survived to adulthood. They were powerful, fast, and utterly convinced of their superiority. That conviction would be their weakness. Elena began moving again, but not toward the extraction point. Instead, she angled toward what appeared to be a damaged communications array jutting from a ruined building. If the simulation was following standard protocols, that array would be connected to the facility's broader network. And if she could access that network— Interesting choice, Commander Vexol observed from the gallery above. She's moving away from her objective. General Morthak's exoskeleton creaked as he leaned forward. Perhaps the human is already confused. The simulation has only been running for 3 minutes. In the observation deck, James Chen winced as he watched Elena's progress on the tactical display. He knew Elena better than most, and her seemingly aimless wandering didn't match the methodical precision he had observed in her maintenance work. There was a plan here, but he couldn't see it. Elena reached the communications array and quickly attached a maintenance interface from her toolkit. To any observer, it would look like she was trying to repair the damaged equipment. In reality, she was using her authorized access codes to penetrate the simulation's network architecture. Lines of code flowed across her helmet display as she navigated through system directories that technically shouldn't have been accessible during a combat exercise. Elena's fingers moved with practiced efficiency, calling up tactical overlays that showed the positions of all active simulation elements. There, 5 red dots moving in a standard search pattern through the urban environment. The hegemony simulation warriors were approximately 800 meters away, working their way systematically through the rubble-strewn streets. Their movement pattern was textbook hegemony doctrine, overwhelming force applied with brutal efficiency. Elena also discovered something else in the system files that made her smile grimly. The simulation parameters had been set to extreme difficulty, meaning the artificial intelligence controlling the hegemony warriors had been given enhanced capabilities and tactical awareness far beyond what actual hegemony troops possessed. Someone wanted to ensure she failed spectacularly. "Combat contact imminent," she whispered to herself, disconnecting from the communications array and moving to a new position. The enhanced AI would have detected her network intrusion by now, which meant her grace period was over. Sure enough, the distant sound of heavy footsteps echoed through the simulated streets. The hegemony warriors had abandoned their systematic search pattern and were converging on her location with frightening speed. Elena had perhaps 90 seconds before they reached her position, and running wasn't an option. Hegemony physiology gave them twice the speed and endurance of a human, even in simulation. Fighting them directly would be suicide. Their personal armor could withstand sustained plasma fire, and their weapons could vaporize her with a single hit. But Elena had advantages that the simulation designers hadn't accounted for, advantages that came from humanity's carefully hidden military heritage. She began moving through the rubble with a speed and agility that would have surprised the observers if they had been able to track her movement. Elena's motion was unlike anything taught in standard galactic military doctrine. Where alien combat training emphasized overwhelming force and direct confrontation, Elena moved like water flowing around obstacles, using the environment itself as both weapon and shield. The first hegemony warrior rounded a corner 60 meters away, its massive form encased in midnight black armor that gleamed with energy shields. The creature stood nearly 3 meters tall, with 4 arms that ended in weapon systems and sensory equipment. Its head was protected by a helmet that could analyze electromagnetic spectra, invisible to most species. Elena was already gone, having used the warrior's own sensory capabilities against it. Hegemony vision was optimized for detecting large, moving targets. They were evolved hunters who had dominated their homeworld through brute force and aggression. What they weren't particularly good at was tracking small, fast targets that understood how their sensory systems worked. From her new position behind a collapsed wall, Elena watched as the hegemony warrior scanned the area where she had been moments before. Its weapon systems powered up, sending streams of plasma fire into shadows and debris. The display of firepower was impressive and would have incinerated any normal target. Elena waited until the warrior had expended most of its immediate ammunition, then moved again. This time, however, she moved toward the creature rather than away from it. In the observation gallery, several cadets leaned forward in surprise. "What is she doing?" Thorax Prime clicked nervously. "That human is approaching a hegemony warrior. Has she lost her mind?" Commander Nexus 9's crystalline form chimed with harmonics of confusion. "This behavior is not consistent with human psychological profiles. Humans are supposed to avoid direct confrontation." Elena had reached a position directly below the hegemony warrior, using the creature's own bulk to shield her from its sensors. She pulled a small device from her toolkit, ostensibly a maintenance scanner, but one she had modified extensively during her months at the academy. The device activated with a barely audible hum, sending a targeted electromagnetic pulse directly into the warrior's armor systems. Elena had learned the frequency vulnerabilities from her maintenance work on captured hegemony equipment. The warrior's energy shields flickered and died. Its weapon systems sparked and went offline. For a critical moment, the most dangerous predator in the simulation was effectively blind and defenseless. Elena didn't waste the opportunity. She vaulted onto a piece of debris that brought her level with the warrior's helmet and drove her combat knife, a simple, non-technological weapon that most species had abandoned centuries ago, directly into the creature's primary sensor array. The hegemony warrior collapsed, its simulation protocols recognizing a fatal hit. "Impossible!" General Morthak breathed, his compound eyes fixed on the tactical display. No human could move that quickly. No human could know enough about hegemony systems to disable them so precisely. But Elena was already moving to her next position. The other 4 warriors would have detected their comrades' destruction and would be converging on her location. The real challenge was just beginning. As she ran through the simulated streets, Elena allowed herself a moment of grim satisfaction. For years, she had watched alien cadets dismiss human capabilities with casual contempt. They saw her species as useful servants, nothing more. The careful facade that humanity maintained had been so successful that even military professionals couldn't conceive of humans as actual threats. That blindness was about to cost them. Elena reached another strategic position, a damaged building with multiple exit routes and clear sight lines. She quickly set up her next surprise, using components from her maintenance kit to create a device that would have been impossible for most species to conceive, let alone construct. The approaching hegemony warriors were moving more cautiously now, their artificial intelligence protocols adapting to the unexpected threat. They advanced in a coordinated formation, covering each other's approaches and scanning for any sign of their target. What they found instead was Elena's improvised trap. The device she had constructed was based on principles that predated humanity's contact with galactic civilization, principles learned in the desperate conflicts that had shaped her species long before they encountered aliens. When the lead warrior triggered the proximity sensor, the device sent a cascade of feedback through the building's structural supports. The entire facade of the building collapsed onto the warriors below. Elena had calculated the collapse pattern precisely, using principles of demolition and structural engineering that were considered obsolete by galactic standards but were devastatingly effective in practice. 2 more hegemony warriors were eliminated in the collapse. The remaining 2 were damaged but still functional, their armor cracked and their weapon systems operating at reduced capacity. From the observation gallery, the sounds of shocked conversation began to filter through the viewing windows. Elena could see alien cadets gesturing frantically at the tactical displays, their body language expressing disbelief and growing concern. Elena began her final approach to the extraction point, but she wasn't running anymore. She was hunting. The last 2 hegemony warriors had taken defensive positions near the objective marker, using their superior firepower to control the approaches. It was a sound tactical decision that would have stopped any conventional assault. But Elena wasn't planning a conventional assault. With Trust Teddy, she circled around to approach from an angle that the warriors' positioning couldn't cover effectively, moving through a section of the urban environment that appeared too damaged to provide concealment. In reality, Elena was using techniques of camouflage and stealth that her species had perfected during conflicts that had never been recorded in galactic databases. The final engagement lasted less than 30 seconds. Elena emerged from concealment directly behind the hegemony warriors, her movements faster than their enhanced reaction systems could track. Her improvised weapons, tools that any maintenance worker might carry, found the precise weak points in their armor that she had cataloged during months of repair work. Both warriors fell, their simulation protocols recognizing fatal damage. Elena stood over their forms, breathing hard but victorious. She had eliminated 5 of the most dangerous simulated opponents in the Academy's database using nothing but standard equipment and tactical knowledge that was supposedly beyond human capability. In the observation gallery, complete silence had fallen. Alien cadets who had spent months dismissing Elena as harmless maintenance staff stared at the tactical displays in shock. The human they had considered barely worthy of notice had just accomplished something that would have challenged the Academy's best combat cadets. Commander Vexel's voice broke the silence. End simulation. Recall Cadet Vasquez immediately. As the holographic environment faded around her, Elena carefully composed her expression into the same humble, slightly confused mask she had worn for months. When the instructors questioned her performance, she would need to provide explanations that didn't reveal the true extent of human capabilities. But as she looked up at the observation gallery, Elena caught sight of something that made her blood run cold. In the back of the viewing area, mostly hidden behind the crowd of alien cadets, stood a figure in the dark uniform of galactic intelligence. Someone had been watching this exercise very carefully, someone with the authority to ask questions that Elena might not be able to answer without revealing secrets that had been hidden for decades. The game had changed, and Elena wasn't sure if she was still the hunter or if she had just become the prey. The debriefing room felt smaller than it actually was, perhaps because of the weight of scrutiny pressing down on Elena from all directions. She sat at a simple metal table, still wearing her combat gear, while 3 instructors and 1 very unwelcome visitor reviewed her performance on holographic displays that floated in the air around them. The visitor wore the charcoal black uniform of Galactic Intelligence, with rank insignia that Elena couldn't immediately identify. More concerning was the neural interface visible at his temple, an Nexari modification that allowed direct connection to data networks and enhanced analytical capabilities. When he looked at Elena, she had the uncomfortable feeling that he was seeing far more than her physical appearance. Agent Crystal 7 of Galactic Intelligence, the figure introduced himself, his harmonic voice carrying undertones that suggested he wasn't entirely Nexari. I'm here to observe the Academy's training methods and evaluate the potential of various species for advanced tactical roles. Commander Vexul gestured at the holographic replay that showed Elena's elimination of the first hegemony warrior. As you can see, Agent Cristal 7, this was a highly unusual performance. Cadet Vasquez demonstrated capabilities that are not consistent with standard human parameters. Elena watched herself on the display, moving with a fluid efficiency that even she had to admit looked remarkable when viewed objectively. The way she had approached the hegemony warrior showed tactical thinking that was supposed to be beyond human capability. Worse, her knowledge of the creature's technical vulnerabilities suggested access to classified information. "Tell me about the electromagnetic pulse device," Agent Crystal 7 said, his attention focused entirely on Elena. That wasn't standard maintenance equipment. Elena had prepared for this question during the few minutes between the simulation and the debriefing. "It was a diagnostic scanner that I modified to test energy field interactions," she said carefully. "During maintenance work, I often need to determine why alien technologies malfunction. The modification allows me to isolate specific frequency ranges." Interesting. The agent made a note on a device that Elena couldn't see clearly. "And this modification process, did you develop it independently?" "Yes, sir. Trial and error mostly. Human equipment often isn't compatible with alien systems, so we learn to adapt." It was a plausible explanation, one that fit with humanity's reputation for improvisation and technical innovation. But Elena could see that Agent Cristal 7 wasn't entirely satisfied with the answer. General Morthak activated another section of the holographic display, showing Elena's approach to the building collapse. "This tactical decision is what concerns me most," he said, his scarred exoskeleton clicking with agitation. "She calculated the collapse pattern perfectly. That requires engineering knowledge far beyond what maintenance personnel should possess." Elena forced herself to remain calm. "I've worked on structural systems throughout the academy. You learn to recognize stress points and load-bearing failures. When I saw the damage pattern, I just thought about what would happen if the supports gave way." Commander Nexus 9's crystalline form chimed with skeptical harmonics. "The precision of that collapse was remarkable. You brought down exactly the section you needed while avoiding damage to your escape route." "I got lucky," Elena said simply. "I was trying to create a distraction, not a precise demolition." The three instructors exchanged glances that Elena didn't like. They were military professionals, and they recognized tactical thinking when they saw it. Her explanations were plausible individually, but taken together they painted a picture of capabilities that didn't match humanity's official profile. Agent Cristal 7 leaned forward, his modified neural interface flickering with activity. "Cadet Vasquez, I'd like to review your background files. Where exactly did you receive your technical training?" Elena felt her pulse quicken, but kept her expression neutral. "Terra Colony 7, sir. My father was a civilian engineer. My mother worked in logistics coordination. I grew up around technical systems." "Terra Colony 7, the agent repeated, and Elena caught something in his tone that made her very uncomfortable. "That's an interesting coincidence. Terra Colony 7 was subject to frequent pirate raids during your childhood, wasn't it?" "Yes, sir. It was a dangerous place to live. And yet the colony survived those raids quite effectively. The pirate groups that attacked Terra 7 had a remarkably high casualty rate compared to their operations against other human settlements." Elena's blood went cold. Agent Crystal 7 had done his research, and he was leading somewhere that she couldn't afford to follow. "The colony had good defensive preparations, sir. Underground shelters, hardened communications, that sort of thing." "Indeed. Defensive preparations that were surprisingly sophisticated for a civilian settlement." The agent's neural interface pulsed more rapidly. "I've been reviewing the tactical analyses of those engagements. The pirates faced opposition that demonstrated advanced knowledge of their equipment, their tactics, and their psychological profiles, almost as if someone had been studying hegemony combat doctrine for years." The room fell silent. Elena realized with growing dread that Agent Crystal 7 had connected dots that she hadn't expected anyone to be able to connect. Terra Colony 7 hadn't just survived the pirate raids through luck and good defensive planning. The colony had been a testing ground for human tactical capabilities, a place where Earth's military could study alien combat systems without revealing their true capabilities. And Elena had been part of those tests. "I don't know anything about tactical analyses," she said carefully. "I was just a child during most of those raids." "Of course." Agent Crystal 7 made another note. "Tell me, what do you know about the Terran protocols?" Elena felt the blood drain from her face. The Terran protocols were among the most classified documents in human space. They contained contingency plans for scenarios where humanity's true military capabilities were discovered, including options that would fundamentally change the balance of power in the galaxy. "I'm not familiar with that term, sir." "That's interesting, because according to my research, every human in the military carries knowledge of the Terran protocols. They're part of your basic conditioning, encoded at a level that most species would find difficult to detect." The agent's neural interface flared with bright harmonics, and Elena realized with horror that he was scanning her. The Nexari modifications allowed for sophisticated analysis of neural patterns, and if he could detect the conditioned responses that every human military member carried— "Agent Crystal 7, Commander Vex-Ul interrupted, his serpentine form coiling with obvious discomfort. "Perhaps this level of interrogation is inappropriate for a simple training exercise evaluation." "Perhaps," the agent agreed, but his attention remained fixed on Elena. "Though I suspect this was far from a simple training exercise. Elena made a decision that she hoped she wouldn't regret. Sir, if you have concerns about my performance, I'd be happy to repeat the exercise under any conditions you specify. I understand that my results were unusual, but I assure you that everything I did was based on improvisation and luck." "Another exercise won't be necessary," Agent Crystal 7 said. "But I will be conducting a more thorough review of your background and training history. Galactic intelligence takes a strong interest in previously unknown capabilities, especially when they appear in species that have been classified as non-combatant." The threat was clear. Elena nodded politely, but her mind was racing through possibilities and contingencies. If galactic intelligence began a serious investigation into human capabilities, the carefully maintained fiction that had protected her species for decades could unravel rapidly. "Dismissed," General Morthak announced. "Cadet Vasquez, return to your regular duties. We will contact you if further evaluation is required." Elena stood and saluted, then made her way toward the door. But as she reached the threshold, Agent Crystal 7 spoke again. "One more thing, Cadet. I'll be reviewing the performance records of all human personnel at this academy. If there are others with capabilities similar to yours, I will find them." Elena left the debriefing room with her mind churning. The situation had become far more dangerous than she had anticipated. Her performance in the simulation had been intended to demonstrate competence while maintaining plausible deniability. Instead, it had attracted the attention of galactic intelligence and potentially exposed the entire human population at the Academy. She needed to contact her handlers on Earth, but the communication channels available to Academy cadets were monitored. Worse, any attempt to use unauthorized communication methods would itself be suspicious. As Elena walked through the corridors toward the human dormitory, she noticed that other cadets were watching her differently. Word of her performance had spread through the Academy's informal communication networks, and aliens who had previously ignored her now tracked her movement with obvious interest. In the observation deck overlooking the main training area, she could see groups of cadets engaged in heated discussions, their body language suggesting arguments about what they had witnessed. Several Kryptonian combat cadets were reviewing holographic displays that appeared to show her simulation performance, their compound eyes focused intently on the tactical data. Elena reached the human dormitory to find a crowd of her fellow cadets waiting for her arrival. James Chen pushed forward through the group, his expression a mixture of amazement and worry. "Elena, what the hell was that?" he demanded. I've known you for 8 months, and I've never seen you move like that. You took down 5 hegemony warriors like they were training dummies." The other human cadets pressed closer, their faces showing a range of emotions from pride to terror. They understood the implications better than the alien observers. If Elena had demonstrated capabilities that marked humans as potentially dangerous, the consequences could extend far beyond the Academy. "I got lucky," Elena said, using the same explanation she had given the instructors. "The simulation parameters were set up in a way that allowed me to exploit some technical vulnerabilities." "That wasn't luck," said Maria Santos, a medical technician trainee who had been at the Academy longer than anyone else. "That was professional-level tactical thinking. Where did you learn to fight like that?" Elena looked around at the faces of her fellow humans, people she had lived and worked beside for months. They deserved the truth, or at least as much of it as she could safely share. "Terra Colony 7 wasn't just a civilian settlement," she said quietly. "It was a training facility. The pirate raids weren't random attacks. They were exercises designed to test human tactical capabilities against alien combat systems." The dormitory fell silent. Then James Chen whispered, "You mean we can actually fight them? All this time we've been pretending to be helpless support staff, but we can actually fight them?" "Some of us can," Elena corrected. "But that knowledge has been classified for very good reasons. The galactic community accepted humanity as members because we appeared to be harmless. If they discover that we've been hiding our true capabilities," she didn't need to finish the sentence. Everyone in the room understood the implications. The galaxy was dominated by species that had earned their positions through conquest and warfare. If humanity was revealed to be a potential threat rather than a useful subordinate species, the response could range from immediate expulsion to preemptive warfare. "So, what do we do now?" Maria asked. Elena considered the question carefully. Agent Kristallison's investigation could expose everything, but there might be ways to limit the damage. If she could demonstrate that her performance was an individual anomaly rather than representative of human capabilities in general, the threat to the broader human community might be reduced. "We do nothing," she said finally. "We continue with our normal duties and hope that this investigation concludes that I'm an unusual case. The worst thing we could do is act like we have something to hide." But even as she spoke, Elena knew that the situation had moved beyond simple damage control. The performance that was supposed to demonstrate human competence without revealing human capabilities had instead triggered a chain of events that could change everything. In the distance, alarms began sounding. Not emergency alerts, but the signals that indicated a major training exercise was beginning. Elena looked out through the dormitory windows and saw ships launching from the Academy's docking bays, their trajectories suggesting a large-scale combat simulation involving multiple species and tactical scenarios. "What's happening out there?" James asked, joining her at the window. Elena watched the ships disappear into the darkness of space, her tactical training automatically analyzing their formation patterns and likely objectives. Then realization struck her like a physical blow. "They're not running a training exercise," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Those are real deployment patterns. Something's happening out there, something big enough to require immediate military response." As if summoned by her words, the dormitory's communication system activated with a priority announcement. "All cadets report to assigned stations immediately. The Academy is implementing Defense Condition 2 protocols. This is not a drill." Elena's mind raced through the implications. Defense Condition 2 meant imminent threat to the Academy or the surrounding system. Combined with Agent Crystal 7's investigation, the timing seemed far too convenient to be coincidental. Someone had learned about human capabilities, and they were responding with military force. The careful balance that had protected humanity for decades was about to collapse, and Elena found herself at the center of a crisis that could determine the fate of her entire species. The Academy's corridors buzzed with frantic activity as cadets and instructors scrambled to respond to the Defense Condition 2 alert. Elena moved with the flow of personnel toward the emergency stations, but her mind was focused on analyzing the tactical situation rather than following the crowd. Through the massive viewing ports that lined the main corridor, she could see the reason for the alert. A fleet of ships hung in space beyond the Academy's defensive perimeter. Not the sleek vessels of the Galactic Alliance, but the angular, aggressive designs that she recognized from intelligence briefings as belonging to the Hegemony Collective, the same species that had provided the combat templates for her simulation exercise. "This can't be a coincidence," James Chen said, appearing at her side as they were herded toward their assigned emergency positions. First Agent Crystal 7 starts asking about human capabilities, then a hegemony fleet shows up? Something is seriously wrong here. Elena nodded grimly. The timing was indeed suspicious, but there were layers to this situation that James couldn't see. The Hegemony Collective had been at peace with the Galactic Alliance for nearly a decade, ever since their crushing defeat in the Outer Rim War. For them to risk open confrontation suggested either desperation or a significant change in the strategic balance. They reached Emergency Station Beta, where human personnel were being assigned to support roles throughout the Academy's defensive systems. Elena found herself assigned to monitor console duties, providing technical support for the Combat Operations Center. It was exactly the kind of background position that humanity was expected to fill during a crisis. The Operations Center was a massive chamber filled with holographic displays that showed the tactical situation in real time. Elena could see Admiral Thanix Prime, the Academy's Krytonian commander, coordinating with ship captains throughout the system. The defensive fleet was taking position around the Academy, but their formation suggested they were outnumbered. "Hegemony fleet composition confirmed," announced Lieutenant Nexus 12 from her position at the primary sensor array. 15 heavy cruisers, 40 destroyer-class vessels, and at least 200 fighter craft. They're demanding immediate surrender of all human personnel. Elena felt her blood chill. The Hegemony wasn't here for conquest or territorial gain. They specifically wanted the humans. Someone had leaked information about her simulation performance, and the Hegemony was responding with overwhelming force. Admiral Thanix Prime's compound eyes focused on the tactical display with visible confusion. Why would the Hegemony risk war for a handful of human support personnel? Their demands make no strategic sense. "Sir!" Agent Crystal 7's voice cut through the command center's noise as he approached the Admiral's position. "I believe I can explain their interest." Elena watched with growing dread as the Galactic Intelligence Agent began sharing his analysis with the Academy's command staff. She could see holographic displays being activated, showing her simulation performance alongside what appeared to be classified intelligence reports. "Based on my investigation," Agent Crystal 7 continued, "I believe that humanity has been systematically concealing their true military capabilities. The performance we witnessed today suggests tactical knowledge and combat effectiveness far beyond what their official profiles indicate." Commander Vexel coiled with agitation. "You're suggesting that humans have been lying to the Galactic Alliance about their combat capabilities? I'm suggesting that their capabilities have been deliberately understated. Review the tactical data from the Terra colony conflicts, examine the casualty rates among pirate groups that attacked human settlements, analyze the engineering solutions that human maintenance personnel have provided to previously unsolvable technical problems." The command center fell silent as various officers began accessing the databases that Agent Crystal 7 had referenced. Elena could see realization dawning on their faces as they connected information that had been carefully isolated in separate files. "If this analysis is correct," Admiral Thanix Prime said slowly, "then we have been harboring a potential threat species without realizing it." Elena felt the mood in the command center shifting in a direction that could prove catastrophic for every human in the Academy. She needed to act, but any intervention would only confirm the suspicions that were already forming. Before she could decide on a course of action, the Academy's communication systems activated with an incoming transmission from the Hegemony fleet. The main display filled with the image of a creature that Elena recognized from intelligence briefings as High Commander Scrax 9, one of the Hegemony's most experienced military leaders. Admiral Thanix Prime, the hegemony commander began, his forearms gesturing in patterns that Elena knew indicated extreme agitation. "We know what you're harboring in that facility. The humans are not what they appear to be." High Commander Admiral Thanix Prime replied formally, "Humanity is a member species of the Galactic Alliance. Your demands for their surrender are unacceptable. You don't understand." Scrax 9's image flickered with poor transmission quality, but his urgency was clear. "We've been monitoring human activities for months. Their maintenance personnel have been systematically studying our equipment, our tactics, our weaknesses. What you call training exercises have been intelligence-gathering operations." Elena realized with growing horror that the hegemony had been conducting their own investigation parallel to Agent Crystal 7's work. Somehow they had detected patterns in human behavior that revealed the true nature of humanity's presence at the Academy. "Furthermore," Scrax 9 continued, "we have evidence that suggests human military capabilities extend far beyond anything they have admitted to the Alliance. The Terra colony conflicts were not defensive actions by civilian settlers. They were tactical exercises designed to test human combat effectiveness against hegemony combat doctrine." The command center erupted in shocked conversation as the implications became clear. Admiral Thanix Prime raised one armored claw for silence. "High Commander, even if your allegations are accurate, the proper response is diplomatic protest through alliance channels, not military action." "Diplomatic protest?" Scrax 9's laugh was a harsh, chittering sound. "Admiral, 3 hours ago we intercepted a transmission from Earth that activated something called the Terran Protocols. Do you know what those are?" Elena's heart stopped. The Terran Protocols were humanity's ultimate contingency plan, designed to be activated only if their true capabilities were discovered and they faced an existential threat. If Earth had activated those protocols, it meant that humanity was preparing for open warfare against the galactic community. Agent Crystal 7 stepped forward, his neural interface flickering rapidly as he accessed classified databases. "Admiral, I'm reading confirmation of the transmission that High Commander Scrax 9 mentioned. Earth's military command structure has indeed activated previously unknown protocols." "What exactly do these protocols contain?" Admiral Thanix Prime demanded. Elena knew the answer, but she couldn't reveal that knowledge without confirming her own involvement in humanity's deception. She watched helplessly as Agent Crystal 7 continued his analysis. "I'm detecting massive communication activity throughout human space," the intelligence agent reported. "Fleet movements, military mobilizations, and what appears to be the activation of previously hidden defensive installations." On the tactical display, Elena could see the hegemony fleet beginning to move into attack formation. Their ships were massive and heavily armed, designed for the kind of overwhelming assault that had made them dominant in their sector of space. But Elena also knew something that the others in the command center couldn't see. Hidden among the asteroid fields and debris clouds that surrounded the Academy system were defensive platforms that had been secretly installed by human engineers over the past several years. Those platforms were equipped with weapons that no one in the galactic community suspected humans possessed. The Academy sensors weren't sophisticated enough to detect the platforms, and Elena couldn't reveal their existence without confirming the very suspicions that had triggered this crisis. But if the hegemony attacked, they would discover humanity's true capabilities in the most violent way possible. "Admiral, High Commander Scrax 9's transmission continued. I'm offering you one final opportunity to surrender the human personnel peacefully. If you refuse, we will take them by force and consider any resistance to be an act of war." Admiral Thanix Prime looked around the command center, his compound eyes reflecting the weight of a decision that could determine the fate of the Academy and everyone aboard it. "High Commander, I cannot comply with your demands. Humanity is a member species of the Alliance, and they are under our protection." "Then you have chosen war," Scrax 9 said simply, and the transmission ended. Elena watched the tactical display as the hegemony fleet began its attack approach. The Academy's defensive ships moved to intercept, but they were outnumbered 3-1. Unless something changed dramatically, the Academy would fall within hours. But as the first hegemony missiles streaked toward their targets, something unprecedented happened. The space around the Academy erupted with weapons fire from sources that didn't appear on any tactical display. The hidden defensive platforms revealed themselves, emerging from concealment with firepower that stunned everyone in the command center. "What are those?" Commander Vexel demanded, his serpentine form coiling in shock as the mysterious weapons destroyed hegemony fighters with frightening efficiency. Elena knew she had reached the point where silence was no longer an option. The Terran protocols had been activated, which meant that humanity's period of concealment was over. Her species was now committed to a path that would change their relationship with the galaxy forever. "Those are human defensive platforms," she said quietly, her voice cutting through the chaos in the command center. "They've been there for 3 years, installed during routine maintenance operations. Every eye in the command center turned toward her, alien faces showing expressions ranging from shock to rage to fear." Admiral Thanix Prime's voice was deadly quiet when he spoke. "Cadet Vasquez, are you telling me that humans have secretly militarized this system?" "I'm telling you that humans have never been as harmless as we appeared," Elena replied, standing straighter as she prepared to reveal truths that had been hidden for decades. "We've been preparing for this moment since our first contact with galactic civilization." Agent Crystal 7's neural interface flared with bright harmonics. "The deception runs deeper than we imagined. She's not just a maintenance worker with unusual skills. She's a trained intelligence operative." Elena nodded slowly. "Among other things, just as Terra Colony 7 wasn't just a civilian settlement and the Academy's human staff aren't just support personnel, on the tactical display, the battle was intensifying as more hidden human weapons revealed themselves throughout the system." But Elena knew that this engagement was only the beginning. Earth's activation of the Terran protocols meant that similar revelations were occurring throughout human space. The galaxy was about to learn that humanity had been planning for this day since their species first looked up at the stars and wondered what was out there. They had prepared for the possibility that their peaceful integration into galactic society might not be permanent, and they had made sure they would be ready when that day arrived. "Admiral," Elena said formally, "I request permission to contact my superiors and arrange for proper coordination between human and Alliance forces. The hegemony isn't the only threat we need to worry about." As the words left her mouth, Elena realized that she had just triggered a chain of events that would reshape the balance of power in the galaxy. The age of human concealment was over, and what came next would determine whether her species became trusted allies or feared enemies of the galactic community. The battle for Kepler Station was just the beginning. The revelation that Elena was far more than a simple maintenance cadet transformed the atmosphere in the command center from shock to barely controlled chaos. Admiral Thanix Prime's compound eyes fixed on her with an intensity that would have intimidated most species, but Elena stood her ground with the calm confidence of someone who had been preparing for this moment her entire life. "Explain," the Admiral commanded, his voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to absolute obedience. "Explain how an entire species has managed to deceive the Galactic Alliance for decades." Elena glanced at the tactical display, where the battle between human defensive platforms and the hegemony fleet continued to rage. More human weapons were revealing themselves by the minute. Ships that had been disguised as cargo vessels, defensive installations hidden within asteroid mining operations, and weapons platforms that had been masquerading as scientific research stations. The deception began before humanity ever made contact with galactic civilization, Elena said, her voice carrying across the command center with perfect clarity. "When our exploratory missions first detected alien signals, Earth's leadership made a critical decision. Rather than announce our presence immediately, we spent 20 years studying galactic society, learning its power structures and threat assessments." Agent Crystal 7's neural interface flickered rapidly as he processed this information. "You're saying that humanity conducted covert surveillance of the Alliance before making formal contact?" "We're saying that humanity learned from the mistakes of species that revealed too much too quickly," Elena corrected, We studied the Veltar Confederation, which was conquered within a decade of joining the Alliance because they were perceived as a military threat. We analyzed the fate of the Morphic Collective, which was relegated to resource extraction duties because their technology was deemed too dangerous. Commander Vexel coiled with agitation. So you deliberately presented yourselves as harmless support personnel. We presented ourselves as what the Alliance needed us to be, Elena replied. Useful, non-threatening, grateful for inclusion in galactic society. Meanwhile, we used our positions to study Alliance military capabilities, political structures, and potential threats. The tactical display showed another wave of hegemony fighters being destroyed by human defensive platforms. Elena could see the growing realization on the faces of the command staff that humanity's military capabilities far exceeded anything they had imagined. The Terra colony conflicts weren't random pirate attacks, she continued. They were training exercises designed to test human tactics against various alien combat systems. Every engagement was carefully monitored and analyzed, with the data being fed back to Earth's military development programs. Admiral Thanix Prime's exoskeleton creaked as he leaned forward. How many humans in the Alliance are actually intelligence operatives? Elena considered how much to reveal. The battle raging outside had already exposed much of humanity's deception, but there were still secrets that needed protection. Approximately 30% of human personnel in Alliance space have military training beyond their official qualifications. The remainder are genuine civilian specialists, though they've been briefed on protocols for situations like this. Situations like this, Agent Crystal 7 repeated, his harmonics sharp with accusation. You mean situations where humanity's deception is discovered? We mean situations where the galactic balance of power shifts in ways that threaten human survival, Elena corrected. The hegemony didn't attack this academy because they wanted to capture a few maintenance workers. They attacked because they discovered that humanity poses a strategic threat to their expansionist agenda. On the communications display, incoming transmissions from throughout human space painted a picture of coordinated military action that stunned the command center staff. Human fleets that had been scattered across the galaxy in supposedly civilian roles were revealing themselves as fully equipped military formations. Defensive installations that had been hidden for decades were coming online with firepower that rivaled the major military powers. Admiral, Elena said formally, I'm authorized to offer Alliance Command full coordination with human military assets in response to this hegemony aggression, but I need to clarify the current strategic situation. Admiral Thanix Prime nodded grimly. Proceed. Elena activated her personal communication device, using authorization codes that she had hoped never to need. The device connected to a secure network that bypassed all Academy monitoring systems, reaching directly to Earth's military command. Terra Command, this is Agent Vasquez. Protocols 7 through 12 are now active, requesting immediate strategic briefing for Allied command personnel. The response came within seconds, and Elena felt a chill as she recognized the voice of Admiral Harrison, Earth's highest-ranking military officer. His presence on the communication channel indicated just how seriously Earth was taking the current crisis. Agent Vasquez, Terra Command confirms full protocol activation. You are authorized to reveal strategic capabilities as necessary to coordinate Alliance defense. Be advised that this situation extends beyond the Academy engagement. Elena looked around the command center, seeing alien faces that reflected growing understanding of how dramatically their situation had changed. Admiral Harrison, please brief Alliance Command on the broader tactical picture. The main holographic display reconfigured itself to show a galaxy-wide strategic map that made several officers gasp in shock. Human military assets were revealing themselves throughout known space, but more concerning was the pattern of hegemony fleet movements that indicated a coordinated offensive far larger than the attack on Kepler Station. Admiral Harrison's voice filled the command center. Alliance Command, this is Admiral Harrison of Terra Fleet Command. Intelligence indicates that the Hegemony Collective has been planning a systematic offensive against Alliance space. Their attack on your academy was intended as the opening move in a campaign to eliminate what they perceive as emerging threats to their expansion. What kind of threats? Admiral Thanix Prime demanded. Species or technologies that could shift the galactic balance of power. The Hegemony's intelligence services identified several targets, including certain Nexari research facilities, Kryptonian manufacturing centers, and what they believed to be human military development programs. Elena watched the faces around her as the implications became clear. The Hegemony hadn't just discovered humanity's deception. They had identified multiple threats to their dominance and were moving to eliminate them before they could mature. The current engagement at Kepler Station is a diversionary attack, Admiral Harrison continued. The main Hegemony offensive is targeting Earth directly, along with 12 other strategically significant systems. They intend to eliminate human military capabilities while Alliance forces are scattered responding to secondary attacks. The command center erupted in urgent communication as officers began coordinating with their respective homeworlds. Elena could see the tactical picture crystallizing into something far more dangerous than anyone had initially realized. Agent Crystal 7 approached her position, his neural interface pulsing with complex harmonics. Agent Vasquez, I need to understand the full scope of human military capabilities. If we're going to coordinate an effective defense, Alliance Command needs complete tactical information. Elena hesitated. Full disclosure would reveal capabilities that humanity had hoped to keep secret for decades longer. But the alternative was defeat in detail as Alliance forces tried to respond to threats they didn't fully understand. Very well, she said, activating additional communication protocols. Terra Command, transmit full tactical briefing to Alliance Command. Authorization Omega 7. What followed was a presentation that fundamentally altered how every person in the command center viewed humanity's place in the galaxy. The harmless human maintenance workers had been studying and cataloging the military capabilities of every species they encountered. The grateful human colonists had been establishing forward operating bases throughout Alliance space. The primitive human technology had been deliberately kept simple to avoid revealing innovations that could have revolutionary applications. Your stealth technology, Commander Vex Uhl said, his voice tight with barely controlled anger. Those defensive platforms were completely invisible to our sensors. Human stealth systems are based on different principles than Alliance technology, Elena admitted. We developed them independently during our pre-contact conflicts. What pre-contact conflicts? Agent Crystal 7 demanded. Elena took a deep breath. This was the revelation that would change everything. Humanity didn't achieve spaceflight and immediately encounter the Alliance. We had been spacefaring for nearly a century before making contact, and we spent most of that time fighting wars against automated defense systems left behind by a previous galactic civilization. The silence that followed was deafening. Elena could see alien faces processing the implications of what she had just revealed. You're telling us, Admiral Thanix Prime said slowly, that humanity fought and defeated the predecessor defense networks? We're telling you that humanity learned to survive in a galaxy that was actively trying to kill us, Elena corrected. The predecessor systems were designed to prevent any species from achieving spacefaring capability. We didn't just overcome them, we studied them, learned from them, and incorporated their lessons into our own military development. The tactical display updated again, showing the current status of the battle around Kepler Station. The Hegemony fleet was retreating, their formation broken by human weapons that had proven far more effective than expected. But Elena knew that this victory was only the beginning. Alliance Command! Admiral Harrison's voice returned to the communication channel. We're prepared to offer full military cooperation in response to this Hegemony offensive. Human fleets throughout the galaxy are moving to support threatened Alliance systems. What are your terms? Admiral Thanix Prime asked, his professional instincts overriding his shock at the revelations. No terms. The Alliance accepted humanity as a member species, and we honor that commitment. But we need to clarify the relationship going forward. Elena stepped forward. The age of human concealment is over. We can't return to being invisible support personnel after this engagement. But we're prepared to take our place as a full military partner in Alliance space. She gestured at the tactical display, where human ships were arriving throughout the system in numbers that suggested a fleet presence far larger than anyone had suspected. We've been preparing for this day since we first encountered galactic civilization. We're ready to defend Alliance space with capabilities that you're only beginning to understand. Agent Crystal 7's neural interface chimed with harmonics that Elena recognized as acceptance. The hegemony forced this revelation by their aggression. But this changes the fundamental balance of galactic power. Yes, Elena agreed. It does. Admiral Thanix Prime studied the tactical displays for several long minutes, his compound eyes reflecting the weight of decisions that would reshape Alliance military doctrine. Finally, he activated the Academy's General Communications System. All personnel, this is Admiral Thanix's Prime. Effective immediately, human personnel are reassigned to full combat status. Cadet Vasquez is hereby promoted to lieutenant and assigned as Academy Liaison for Human Military Assets. Elena saluted formally, though her mind was racing through the implications of what had just occurred. Her performance in a simple training simulation had triggered a chain of events that revealed humanity's true nature to the galaxy. As she looked around the command center, Elena saw the faces of beings who had considered her species to be harmless servants just hours before. Now they were seeing humans as they truly were, a species that had survived centuries of warfare against impossible odds, that had learned to fight and win against enemies that most civilizations couldn't even imagine. The galaxy would never look at humanity the same way again. But as Elena watched human and Alliance ships forming coordinated battle groups to face the hegemony threat, she realized that this was exactly what her species had been preparing for all along. The time for hiding was over. Now it was time to show the galaxy what humans could really do when they stopped pretending to be harmless. The war that followed would be remembered as the moment when humanity stepped out of the shadows and took their place among the galaxy's great military powers. And it had all begun with an unassuming cadet whose battle clips left everyone speechless.